Mod Mesh for Houdini. I'm going to implement this system created by Follygon in Houdini. So what is Mod Mesh? Mod Mesh is a series of 31 different heads that can be combined in multiple ways to create over 28 million possible combinations. So that is Mod Mesh, and if we go to that website, it costs about $70. And here are the 31 different heads that make up Mod Mesh. So you can see that it's the shape language is quite interesting. It's kind of on the stylized side, but they're still very flexible, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of anatomy baked into these base meshes. So it makes for a very interesting kind of starting point for our modeling that we're going to do in Houdini with this HDA. So, okay, I wanted to show you some of the tests that I've been doing with this Mod Mesh system. So if I run through, here are some of the heads that I've created as tests. And it's quite a lot of fun to create these, and I just want to show you how I did it using Mod Mesh with Modeler for Houdini. Okay, here we are in Houdini, and I've loaded up my HDA, the Mod Mesh Heads HDA. So we have skulls, necks, jaws, noses, and ears, and each one of these is on a slider from 0 to 30, and so that's 31 different heads. Let me just show you quickly, before we get into using the HDA, I want to just show you how it was constructed a little bit. So if I right-click and hit Allow Editing of Contents, and then double-clicking on it, we'll come in, and you see there's 5 different file nodes here. So each one of these, here's all our skulls, and here's all the necks, etc. Here's the jaws, etc. You know, buy it and download it, and then it'll come in, and on your hard drive you can have these different assemblies. And then if I come over to my HDA, each one of these files imports, you can load in each one of those assemblies into the respective slots on that HDA. Of course, that would be local to your machine. So after you load those in, then you can come up and save node type and then match current definition, and then that would be your HDA on your machine. I will put a link to this TC Mod Mesh Heads HDA in the description of the video so that you can download it and then plug in your own models that you've bought off of Mod Mesh and then get this HDA working. All right, so let's start to use this HDA. So I have my sliders working, but there's something else I wanted to show you. I have a Unison 1 and Unison 2 down here, and these sliders are not hooked up to anything yet, but I can hook them up and move 2 or more or all of them in unison. So how do I do that? So I right click on the name of that parameter and hit copy parameter, and then right click on the names of on the sliders and hit paste relative reference. So if I do that to all of them, then I can move them all in unison, and we can take a look at all our models. So I've pasted the relative reference in all of those, and so if I click and drag, you can see here are all the 31 models that we have available to us. We're picking some heads here, and so this gives us an idea. Let's say we want to start in kind of this ballpark. So now we want to disconnect. Everything's on this one unison slider, so we want to disconnect. Let's say I like the head and neck on this one, the skull and the neck, and I want to disconnect the jaw, the nose, and the ears. To disconnect these sliders, you hold Control Shift and then left mouse button on that slider. Or you can alternatively right click on it and then come up and delete channel. That'll also do it. And then click on them again and they'll update. So now I can move the jaw independently. But let's say I want to, I can come up on this unison 2 and copy parameter, and then come paste relative reference, and then right click and then paste relative reference again on that slider. So now I can move in unison this slider. So the unison 2 now, it says set all to, controls the jaws and the nose. So I can just control the jaw and the nose on that one. So, kind of like that. All right, let's go with that. Now I can control shift click on all of those sliders just to make them all independent of one another. That's the beauty of this. And then let's try a different skull. And there's something else I haven't shown you yet that we can do with this. Let's pick that. Let's pick this skull, and then I can go into, and I can turn on the transforms for the skull. And I can move it up, and I can scale it up a little bit and move it frontwards or backwards right in the HDA itself, which gives me a lot of control. I'm going to scale it up a little bit more and move it back or move it up. I like that. Then on the jaw, I can, let's see if there's another jaw that I might like a little better. That's interesting. Let's try that jaw. And I'm turning on the transforms. By clicking this thing, it'll bring up the controls for the transform, and I want to scale it up just a little bit and then move it forward in the z-axis a little bit, kind of like that. So the ears, let's see what different ear we can try here. Not too much. That one's all right. So on the ears, if I open up the transforms on that, scale the ear up a little bit. That's okay for now. So that's good. Now I can, let's see if there's another nose. So I think I'm going to like that nose though. I'm going to go with 14. So I'm going to open up the transforms for the nose, move it forward just a little bit, move it back a little bit. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Yeah, I'm going to go with 18. I'm going to turn on the transforms for the neck, scale it up just a little bit, and move it in Y just a touch. Scale it up a little bit. Okay, let's go with this for the time being. At this point, you can decide to take this into ZBrush or keep it in Houdini. I'm going to keep it in Houdini. But if you did want to go to ZBrush, you could, there's a one-button solution. It's called Z for Houdini, and it's by Alexei Van Zula. And he is the developer of Modeler for Houdini, which we're going to be using a lot here in a moment. So you might want to go to his Gumroad page. If you haven't bought it already, Modeler is what we're going to be using from now on. Fantastic, totally worth $100. But there's also Z for Houdini, which is for $30, and that's a one-button solution from Houdini to ZBrush. So I'll show you that right now. So I'm going to go to the shelf tools for Z and press to ZBrush. And press it again, and it pops up. And here we are in ZBrush. So what you do from here would be to auto group it. See your polygroups here, and you know, you can move around, do whatever you want in ZBrush. But we're not going to do that. I'm going to come back over here and we're going to show you Modeler for Houdini. Here is the launcher menu for Modeler for Houdini, and while we're not going to go over all these tools, most of the tools we're going to use are the pen tool and the brush tool, but those can be accessed through the context-sensitive menu. I have that on A, and I have the main launcher menu on Alt A because I wanted to use S as the native Houdini selection types. Before we can go to the exercise quad remesher to retopologize this, I'm going to have to Boolean all this together. But before I do that, I want to add some eye, just an eye sphere to determine where our eye is going to be. So the best way to do that is select some polygons that you want where the eye should go, and then make sure that you're in create in context in this tool options, because we want it to be on the same level as, we don't want it to be on the object level, we want it to be on the SOP level here. Bring up the context sensitive menu and hit Q sphere, and that's going to put a sphere right on the surface where we had those polygons selected. Hold down the just click and drag to resize. Hold the Z key down to increase the uniform resolution, and then move it around with these with the handles to get it sort of where we want it. That's fine for now. Hit the escape key to get out of that tool. We have two tools here, so this is a good opportunity to show the navigation between two different objects on the SOP level in Modeler. So if I hold my mouse over the object that I want to move to and then just tap the space bar, it'll move to that object and actually move the network view over to match. So that's very handy. It's game changing, really, in terms of navigation in Houdini. Now that we've added an eye, we're going to Boolean this whole object together so that it's all one piece. But before I do that, I want to mirror the eye across. So how do I do that? Bring up the main menu, and I want to make sure this X is selected, and then I want to hit symmetrize. So I have my eyes here and my head here. So I need to make them one piece. So I can do that by just grabbing both those nodes, holding on the Alt key, and dragging out a merge node on the bottom. So now I want to Boolean this whole thing together so it's all one piece. But before I do that, I want to subdivide it. So to do that, I would right click on top of the geometry and then select everything, and then bring up the launcher menu and hit the subdivide, and then I can crank that up to 2 to get a nice clean lines between the objects. So I have this subdivided, so hit the tab key and type in BOOL to bring up our Boolean operations, and I want Boolean union. Pump the output from the subdivide into the A and B slots of the Boolean, and that will Boolean with itself and create a nice one-piece mesh. To bring up our quad remesher, and to do that, you hit the tab key and type in REM and look down the list, and we have exercise quad remesher. Now, quad remesher, before I attach it, I want to turn off the auto cook. Now, the quad remesher is a paid, you have to pay for it. I think it's like $50 or something like that. But it's really the only option that we have for getting a nice clean quad remeshed mesh that we can have some degree of control over. So before I attach it, I want to turn the adaptive size down to about 15-ish. I want to turn on the symmetry axis, and then we are going to use a primitive group boundary that we're going to create. And by coming up to our Boolean, coming to the side, picking my lasso, making sure that this select visible geometry only is off. And then we're going to select portion of this area that kind of delineates our nasal labial fold. It's very important to have this nasal labial fold in the model before we quad remesh it. So to do that, I create a group out of this. So we have that as a group, and then bring up our menu again and hit boundary edges. So that gives us the boundary edges, and they look quite rough, but we're going to fix that. So I want to create another group out of that, and it's smart enough to know that that's an edges group. So with that group, it's group number 2. I can hit the tab key and go to SMOO, which is smooth, and I want to use this labs edge smooth. And that's going to, it's going to give me nice smooth edges around there, which is what I want. Now, I like to do this, but I'm not sure it's necessary. You can shake this group loose and put it down here so that you're absolutely sure that you're getting a nice smooth group out of this. So since the point count didn't change, I can move that group down there, and so this gives us a nice smooth group. So we have the exercise quad remesher here, and I've cranked it up to like 7,000 adaptive size at around 15. Use prim groups, and I'm going to use this prim group up here that we set already, and put the symmetry axis on. So if I put that together, it's going to calculate that mesh. And so we have the mesh. I have a nice nasolabial folds here. It's not quite in the right place, but we can move that around. But in terms of cleanliness of the mesh and the right density, this is about the right density that I like to work with. Maybe higher than some people like to work with, but with the tools that Modeler gives you, you'll see that it's not a problem working at this density. One thing about the exercise quad remesher, you never want to have that in your chain, because every time you save the file, it exercise quad measure recooks, and there's no guarantee that it's going to have the exact same point count when it recooks. So any modeling you do after the exercise quad remesher will be for naught if you don't cache it first. So how do we cache it? Probably the easiest way to do is just bring up a file menu. Okay, with the file menu, I like to bypass it, then hook it up, and then change it to write files. Then we just pick a name here. We'll call this, and we'll call it a .bgeo file, and hit enter. And then we'll unbypass it, put the flag there, and reload the geometry. And you can, so now we can disconnect this, and this is just our geometry. Then it's reading this off of the hard drive. At this point, it doesn't matter if this is connected or not. We'll just leave it connected for now. Now, if it recooks, it doesn't matter because we have the file cache right here. So that's just a word to the wise. You want to have a break after this exercise quad remesher. Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what Modeler can do for us, and we're going to be working a lot with this context menu, and specifically the polypen and the brush tool. The shortcut for the polypen tool is Q, and then brings up the pen tool, and Shift F1 brings up the hints. Very good to know all these options for the pen tool, because we're going to be using them all. I'm going to turn them off. Okay, so how to use the pen tool. Zoom in, and just to hold the shift key to add an edge. So we're going to add an edge like that, and we have a triangle here and an n-gon here, and I like to be able to see that really nicely. So there's a new tool called Viz Vertex Count. So if I turn that on, basically what it does is it just loads up a visualizer that we can access down here, and it says vertex count. So What it does is wherever there's a trie, it's yellow, and wherever there's an n-gon, it's red. So super handy to have that on. With the pen tool, to get rid of a line, you just click on it, and then we're back to all quads, and it's white. Another thing that we're going to do quite early on is to start to delineate edge loops. So how I do that is holding down the Shift and A key, I can just click and drag in the direction that I want to go, and it'll pick that entire loop. And then bringing up the launcher menu, go to the color icon. That's going to drop down a color node. And then we can adjust that color node if we want to make it a little lighter, which I usually do. So we get a good idea from this where our nasal labial fold is going to fall. Usually it's only necessary to work on half the model at once since it's symmetrical. So we want to clip it in half. To do that, you bring up the launcher menu, make sure you have the positive X selected for symmetry, and then just hit the clip button, and that'll clip the model in half. I'm holding the Shift A. I'm going to click on the around the eye. Then I can hold Shift H. You look down here, Control H or Shift H will flood fill an area. So if I hold down Shift H, it'll fill that area with selection. And then hit the color node again and adjust the color. And so there is our eye. We're going to have to expand that. If I bring the pen tool, then I can start to, let's say I want this edge loop around here. So if I turn off the visualizer, it's essentially turning on and off the color. So I'd like to have, so I can turn off the color and then turn on the vertex count. Holding down the Shift key, if I just with the Shift key held down, just click on a edge loop, and it'll put in an entire edge loop. Then hold the Shift key and start to connect these up, and then just tap on that key. Actually, I'm going to need that, and I want to bring that in here. I don't have to resolve this all immediately, but by deleting this and this, so then now if I turn off my visualizer, hitting the 4 key, then Shift A to grab that edge loop, and then bring up the pick color. And now I can pick a color on the model, and it'll fill that area that I have selected with color. Hold down A, bring up the brush tool, middle mouse button to expand and contract the size of the brush tool, and then hold down the Shift key to smooth an area out. So it's very important to have some reference. I have this on another monitor, but I'm trying to emulate, let's say, this guy has very good edge loops. You can see it's very well animated. So this is the kind of edge looping that we want to emulate. It's good to have topology reference when you're working on this stuff. So this is sort of an edge, our mask edge loop that I want to create. So hit the color, that'll bring up the color node. Okay, so now hit 8 to go into the pen tool. I want to slice that, go into this mode, turn off the visualizer. I think I want to have this edge loop go up in this direction. I don't have to resolve this immediately, but I do want to get this edge loop in, which would be right. This is the edge loop. Bring up the context menu to hit the brush tool, and I can soften this and smooth this out. I'm not sure about this quite yet. but gives me a good idea. I'm going to start to work on the interface between these two edge loops. So I want to expand this one out a little bit. So hit 4 key to go into selection mode. Shift A to select it that way, and then you have to do Shift A and go in that direction also. I want to have this, I think that's enough around there, so I wanted to have this edge loop run into right here. So I'm going to hold down Shift and A. I hit the 3 key to select edges, then Shift and A to just select down to that point. Then coming here, I can, coming up to the launcher menu and hit collapse. Collapses this portion. Let's see how I like that. And then I'm going to turn this off. We have a try here. Now I can run that up into the eye, or I can run it, I think I want it, the Q key to go into the pen tool. Hold the control key down. I want to go in this direction because this is getting too stretched here. So if I hold the shift key and just lightly tap on that edge loop, it'll put down edge loop there. Hold the control key to match that up, and then just tap on that to get rid of it. And then that's interesting. So that edge loop, see with the color, you really get a good sense of where your edge loops are going. So I have to run this edge loop down here some more. So I want to hit the Q key, come like this, grab that one, delete that edge, hold the shift key down, and then if I hold the shift and control key down, then I can slide this edge, and it doesn't slide. If it hits anything that's red, then it will stop sliding, and that's going to come in very handy. Hold the shift key down. Okay, so now I have a triangle here that has to be resolved, and that's going to have to go up to the eye. Control key to add that, and then just delete it. Let's see how we're doing with our edge loops. So if I hit the 4 key, I want to select this, and then go to color picker, and you see there's an Alt-Shift-C is the hotkey down in the lower left-hand corner. So from now on, we're going to, okay, here we have to pick this. Come on. Then Alt-Shift-C, and then pick another color, and it will fill that color in. These are very much like polygroups in ZBrush. That's essentially what we're doing here. So if I turn off the color, turn on the visualizer, I have to go to the Q key, bring up our pen tool, hold down the shift key, just tap on that one, and so then I've moved that up. So if I go to the pen tool, which I'm still in the pen tool, and hold down the shift control, then I can slide this edge loop around. A good practice to get into is deleting the history every once in a while, because there's no sense in having a big long chain of nodes that are all non-procedural, so just more of a liability than an advantage. Best to get rid of that and delete the history. And to do that, bring up the launcher menu and just hit the delete history, and that's going to put it all up in a new node. What I do generally is to copy that node so that I have it just a record of where I've deleted history, and then I go back to work on the second node, so that I usually have it, and then I save the file at that point. I think that's a good practice to get into. Okay, so if we wanted to pick an area based on color from the model, we would pick an area, then go to our launcher menu, and then in the selection area, there's a menu item called Pick by Color, and that's going to pick that entire color, which is very handy. But let me see if I want to pick, let's say I want to pick this color right there. So I go to the launcher menu and I go pick by color, and so if you pick by color, it's going to pick the entire everything that's color, and it may not be what you want. Let's say you only want this inside this masking area. So how do you deselect the areas that you don't want? Well, we're going to go use that the H option again, and this time we're going to hold down Control H, and it will turn the area that we are not interested in red, and then when you just click on it, and now just that area is selected. So that's how you deselect areas that you don't want. And then at this point we can pick color, go to pick color, and we'll pick this color, and then it'll fill that whole entire area. Okay, so that's more about color. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of the basics. Now probably going to go into time-lapse mode to get some of this stuff done.